Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you're well. Did a video earlier that I instantly deleted because I knew that our I don't even know what I can say and what I can't say right now. But let's say our overlords, our social media overlords would definitely not approve of. So I proactively took that down. So I wanted to take another stab at it and a way that was a little more subdued and less emotional because I was pretty pissed off and I was borderline irate. And that's not how I like to do these videos. It's very difficult for me not to get overly emotional when we're talking about the future of our kids and grandkids and whether or not we're going to be living in a country and in a society that values freedom, or are we going to be living under something that resembles Stalinist Russia, which is what Australia, or at least New South Wales, is experiencing right now? Tough for me to keep my cool under those conditions, but let's go over we're going to go over all of the articles and some more that I went over in the video that I deleted earlier. So it starts off, we do a screen share. Well, actually, let's do the same thing that I did before and start by giving you a definition of gaslighting. Very important you understand how this is defined, because this is exactly what the people that are we'll call it mandates, and you guys know the mandates I'm referring to. These people are pro Jim Crow 2.0 laws, let's just say. And I want to make it very clear before I start, I am not anti-medicine. I think if you do a risk reward for yourself and feel as though it's appropriate, go nuts. I'm all for it. What I am anti is mandates, government issued mandates, where they tell citizens they have to do X, Y, or Z, or they tell businesses that it is illegal for them to serve a portion of the American population. That's Jim Crow laws. And I think every American should be against Jim Crow laws. I don't know why you would be against the Jim Crow laws we had decades ago and not against the ones we're seeing today, Jim Crow laws 2.0, in New York City, in San Francisco, New Orleans, and I'm sure we'll see them in many other places. So many people get caught up on the relationship between the business and the consumer, saying, oh, George, it's nothing like that because you can't change the color of your skin, but it's very easy to go down and get medicine. It's free at Walmart. The mistake they're making is they're not looking at it from the standpoint of what's most important, in my opinion, and that is the relationship between the government and the private sector, or the government and the business. I am definitely concerned about the relationship between the business and consumer, but nowhere near as concerned as I am with the government and the businesses, or the government and the private sector. The government is what we really have to watch out for. They are the enemy in this equation. They are the enemy that we are battling today. We've got to prioritize here. And it's just like your house being on fire. You could have a broken toilet, but if your house is on fire, you're going to put out the fire first, and then you're going to try to fix the toilet. You're not going to try to fix the toilet while the house is on fire. And the government represents that house being on fire. So these people that are pro central planning, these people that are trying to usurp more power, or at least trying to allow the government to take more of your personal freedom and liberty so they can score brownie points with their tribe, or they can get power, or they can have some sort of financial gain through the Cantillon effect. Who knows what it is? But they're using this technique called gaslighting. They might not even realize they're doing it because they just haven't done the homework. But here's what it is. To gaslight someone means to make them doubt their sense of reality. Gaslighting is a form of manipulation commonly seen in abusive relationships. It is a form of emotional abuse where the abuser bullies the victim about their judgment or perception of reality. The victim finally starts to doubt their own credibility. And I would argue that the people that are doing the gaslighting, and we'll bring up an example of that very soon, are doing this by lying to people in a way that's so convincing that it makes them believe that they are wrong. So let's move on to this article from everyone's favorite economist, Joseph Stiglitz. He was Paul Krugman before Paul Krugman, bottom line. And so he is saying millions are dying unnecessarily from the cerveza sickness because of selfishness, greed, and a perverse misunderstanding of human freedom. How is it even possible to have a misunderstanding of human freedom? Is freedom a word we really need to define? That we need to have levels of freedom? Or do we just need to have specific laws that people abide by that protect personal property and the limited role for government, I think, would be protecting private property. I don't want to go off on a tangent there, but that we really don't, there's not that much of a misunderstanding of human freedom. But that's not where he goes wildly, well, this is where he goes wildly wrong, but it gets even worse. First of all, he starts referencing the Bible, which is, he starts just making this asinine comment that we should somehow change the 10 Commandments to say, not only thou shalt not kill, but to say thou shalt not kill, including by spreading infectious diseases when thou can avoid doing so. I think he thinks he's being clever right here, but he's just being a retard. And, you know, that's par for the course, because the intelligentsia, as Thomas Sowell calls them, the global elite, which Joseph Stiglitz would definitely fall under that category. He was in charge of the World Bank back, I believe, 1997 to 2000, which puts him right up there with the IMF, the World Economic Forum, you know, the bunch. But these people believe that they are so much smarter than everyone else that they need to rule over you because you are just too dumb to make your own decisions. And they also believe that they're incredibly clever and that they need to show off their cleverness whenever possible so everyone can appreciate it and just be awestruck by their intelligence. So I could really go off on tangents here, but I'm going to try to stay focused and get to the meat of the subject with what I've highlighted. He goes on to say, and yet not nearly enough people in the US have the medicine to prevent highly contagious variant from driving cases. I'm trying to monitor or watch what I say here for our social media mandarins. In many areas, new highs. Okay, so let's dive into this real quick here. So what he's saying is that because people haven't taken the medicine, we now have an issue with case numbers. Okay, let's go ahead and go over to, and I could pull up 1,000 articles like this, but we'll just use this one from Medical News, written August 26, so very recently. With this infection that I cannot name, you guys can read right here on the screen. People who have the medicine and people who do not have the medicine have similar levels of, let's call it, infectiousness. So to sit here and argue, like Mr. Stiglitz is, that somehow that the people that have not gotten the medicine are disproportionately contributing to the number of cases is wrong. It's just wrong. But yet he's saying it as though it's fact. Most likely, he knows the reality, and he's saying it because he is gaslighting. That's going back to that definition. So it makes people who have not done the homework, like Howard Stern, by the way, the useful idiots, to automatically assume that if you have the medicine, then let's say your viral load is much lower, and therefore it reduces the risk that you spread the cerveza sickness. And let's not forget another thing, that what does the medicine do? Very well, in fact. It reduces symptoms. Okay, let's take it to the next step. If you have no symptoms, but you're walking around with a similar viral load to someone who has symptoms, who is more dangerous? Probably the person without symptoms. Why? Because they don't know they're sick. If you have 103-degree temperature, if you have cold sweats, if you're coughing all the time, if you feel terrible, then you know you're sick. And with what we're dealing with in the world today, what are you most likely going to do? You're not going to go outside. You're going to isolate. You're going to stay away from friends and family members. Makes sense. But if you don't have any of those symptoms, you don't know that you have an extremely high viral load, and you're out there going to the gym, you're going to concerts, you're going to restaurants, you're laughing with your friends and family. So who here is more dangerous, Mr. Stiglitz? And why are you not mentioning that? And it goes back to the same thing that I've been tweeting over and over and over and over again, because this narrative is not about health. Period. End of story. Let's keep moving on. How do so many people, or excuse me, how do so many in a country with seemingly well-educated people act so irrationally against their own interest, against science, and against the lessons of history? I don't know, Mr. Stiglitz. You seem to be pretty educated. In fact, I think you teach at Columbia University. So how is it that you can be so educated, but yet be so wrong? How is it that you can be educated, but yet have no problem lying to your fellow Americans? How is it that you can be educated, but yet, whether it's intentional or not, gaslight so many of the people that are reading this article? So many people like Howard Stern, and most likely Arnold Schwarzenegger. How is it that you can do that? Because this is the pot calling the kettle black right here, isn't it? How he is condemning well-educated people for acting irrationally against their own interests. At least they're acting irrationally against their own interests. What you're doing is you're acting and specifically lying and misleading people to further your own self-interest, which is worse. And you are acting against the science to further your own self-interest, to score brownie points with your tribe, to get more power. So ethically, who is worse, Mr. Stiglitz? And the real lessons that we need to learn from history is why we need to prevent people like Mr. Stiglitz from ever, ever, ever having power. And here we go. So I'm going to try to keep my cool here because this is the section that really, really sends me off the deep end. But let's dive in here. But a key part of the answer is a deep misinterpretation. How can you have an interpretation of individual liberty, especially among the right? And there we go. Now we know what this is all about. As soon as you take that jab, that low blow, you might as well just show your hands or show your hand in a game of poker. You're just basically you're saying this is a piece of propaganda, which it is. Unfortunately, most people can't realize right off the bat because they aren't, let's say, trained, self-trained to see the immediate red flags. But that's one of them right there. You guys know the other red flags. Whenever the people, quote unquote, experts, fail to talk about those who have had the cerveza sickness before, that's another dead giveaway that it's just pure propaganda and that there's something going on here other than health, or there's a motive or an incentive here other than health. Okay. Those who refuse to wear a mask or socially distance often argue requirement to do so infringe on their freedom. But one person's freedom is another person's unfreedom. Let me read that again. One person's freedom is another person's unfreedom. You see what they're doing there? You see, Mr. Stiglitz he's obviously a Keynesian, but this is a very Marxist view. And what I mean by that is they're looking at the pie as though it's fixed. It's only going to be so big. They're looking at it as though this is a zero-sum game. Right? It's just how they look at the economy. That it's this static pie that we just have to divvy up. And if I get a bigger piece, that means everyone else gets a smaller piece. Instead of trying to look at that pie and say, hey, how can we grow the size of the pie? You see, he's looking at freedom the exact same way. As though it is just this pie that cannot expand. It's just one size. And if you have more freedom, that means someone else has less freedom. And he literally says that. But one person's freedom is another person's unfreedom. It's a zero-sum game, this freedom thing. How can you be that delusional? Really? If their refusal to wear a mask or not get a medicine results in others getting the cerveza sickness, their behavior is denying others the more fundamental right to life itself. Okay, let's unpack this nonsense. So we discussed the medicines above. We debunked that. I think everyone gets it. As far as wearing a mask, that has been debunked so many times. And I've talked about this. Do masks work? Yes, they do. When you are in a laboratory situation, when you are in a scientific experiment, absolutely. If you're wearing an N95 mask that is perfectly fitted, if you are a man and you have just shaven, so there are absolutely no gaps whatsoever with that N95 mask, then yeah, it'll move the needle. To what degree? It's up for debate, but it will move the needle. Now, I ask you, how many people do that? Is that what Mr. Stiglitz is asking us to do? Or is he saying just go into a store like this, as though that's going to do something? Or is he just asking you to wear one of those blue things where you're touching 85 times and it's doing more harm than good, let's say, most likely, right? And how do I know this? Because look at the studies and then look at the states and cities that have implemented mask mandates, and you'll see that it doesn't do any good. People think that it's totally irrational to believe that masks work and mask mandates do not. But yet, if you think about it, it's very easy to hold those two thoughts at the same time. They're very consistent with one another. Masks in a laboratory, certain masks worn perfectly in a laboratory setting move the needle. Mask mandates do not. So, but I'm going to be as objective as possible. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But we need to understand that it's not just the people who have the medicine that, let's say, can move the needle by wearing a mask. It's the people who have had the medicine and who have not had it. Okay, so let's just assume for a moment that is true. Now let's move on. Their behavior is denying others the more fundamental right. Okay, so who are we protecting here? Let's think about this because it's important. So are we protecting the people who have had the medicine? Nope. Nope, not protecting them. They don't need protecting, according to Mr. Stiglitz, right? Because according to these people, the medicine is perfect. So or as perfect as possible. So that's not the group that Mr. Stiglitz is referring to. Are we protecting the people that have already had the cerveza sickness? Nope, not protecting them either. Because they have just as much benefit, if not more of a benefit, than those who have had the medicine. Okay, so we're not protecting those people either. So who are we protecting? Even if Mr. Stiglitz is correct with what he is saying about the masks, or really the whole vibe of this article, the only people we are protecting is the people that have chosen not to get the medicine and people who have not yet, or so they know, have had the cerveza sickness. Okay, great. But let's further think about those people. Why haven't they had the medicine? And I'm talking about 99%. Of course, there's 1% of the population, small percent, let's say pregnant women or people who, well, according to Stiglitz and these people, pregnant women should even have the medicine, but maybe immune compromised folks and whatnot, or maybe some people that just have an allergic reaction. But there again, we need to talk about that group in a separate video because the mandates from the government apply to them as well. Right. So, but anyway, let's just focus on the 99% here of the people. They have made a conscious decision using their own free will to not get the medicine based on their own individual risk reward, or what they perceive to be the risk reward. What is this like? This is exactly like driving. Exactly. Exactly. Think about it. If you go out driving, you are taking a risk. You're taking a risk with your own life, and you're taking a risk that you might kill someone else. But why is that not a huge concern for the population at large? Because everyone else out on the road, excluding drunk drivers and whatnot, are knowingly and based on their own free will taking the exact same risk. And if they don't want to take that risk, they don't drive, or they walk, or they use a bicycle or something like that. You see, so this is the only group of people that could possibly be protected, is the group of people that have chosen to take the risk. So why are we protecting them? That is identical, exactly like saying what we need to do is ban, or if you drive, then you are acting immorally. If you drive, you are acting in a way that is unethical. Or to use Mr. Stiglitz' words, if you drive, you are being selfish, you are greedy, and you have a perverse misunderstanding of human freedom. Because driving is identical to what Mr. Stiglitz is outlining in the rest of this article. When you break it down by the people that could be affected by either not wearing a mask or not having the medicine, even if you believe his gaslighting. So if Mr. Stiglitz wants to be intellectually consistent, then he also needs to argue to ban driving. That's really taking this to its logical conclusion. The article goes on and on and on, and if I continue with it, I will not only be more frustrated, but this video will go on for 2 hours. So let's move on to one of the useful idiots, Howard Stern. And it really is unfortunate because I was such a huge fan of Howard Stern, and he used to represent the complete opposite of what he represents today. I don't know when he just lost the plot or fell off the deep end, but man, oh man, just unfortunate. But he's in the heart, he's in the belly of the beast. He's in New York. I'm sure he's just consuming 8 hours a day of CNN and MSNBC, and again, he's just not doing the research. And I'm making assumptions. So let's read what he says here. When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say it's mandatory to get the medicine? F them, F their freedom, Stern said. And here is when you can tell that he has completely lost the plot, and he is one of the useful idiots. I want my freedom to live. I want to get out of the house already. I want to go next door. I want to play chess, and I want to go take some pictures. Okay, Howard, what is preventing you from doing that? How are people that have not taken the medicine, assuming that you have, how are they preventing you from doing that? On what planet, in what alternate universe can you somehow square that circle? That makes absolutely no sense at all. And assuming this is a quote that he said, and who knows with the media today, they could have just made this up. But assuming that is a direct quote, you can see how he's completely delusional, and he's just reiterating some talking points from CNN. That's all he's doing there. That would imply that somehow, if everyone goes out and gets the medicine, that life will go right back to what it was in 2019. When anyone that has done any research whatsoever knows that is an impossibility. That ain't going to happen. I'm sorry to break it to you, but we are never going to be rid of the cerveza sickness unless we have some new types of medicine that prevent transmission or get the R naught value under 1. That's the only way you do it. And if you don't believe me, do the research yourself. I saw someone on the live stream before with a video that I deleted saying that I was spreading misinformation and whatnot. Tell me what misinformation am I giving? Just do the homework yourself. It's all out there. All you have to do is use some critical thinking, look at different reports, and just think for yourself for a moment. And here, Robin, who I also used to really like, I thought she was great. I have trouble drumming up compassion. And I think that's a terrible thing, not to be able to drum up compassion for people that stupid that they wind up dying. Okay. And they're specifically referring to, I guess, some radio hosts, some conservative radio hosts that passed away and were very anti-medicine, let's say. Is that unfortunate? Yeah, absolutely it is. Was that their choice? Yep. Should they have been allowed to make that choice? 100%. Think about if you were to argue that we should not allow people to take risk with their own lives, we should not allow people to take risk. Where does that end? That is a very, very, very slippery slope. Because just by walking out your front door, you take risk. And I think eventually that's where these central planners and the global that's where they want this to go. They want this to go as though you never leave your house. You never do anything but just live in a virtual world online. And Miss Quivers and Howard Stern, just useful idiots that are going along just like all the people in the media and all the politicians went along with Lenin and Joseph Stalin. There we go. So I kept that as YouTube friendly as I possibly could. Hopefully I won't get a strike for that one. we shall see. I was able to control my temper a little bit more on that one than I did before. So it's just I want to go over the red flags really quick again. Just in case you guys didn't hear that. I know some of you probably hopped on a little bit late. So you can see the BS. And so your BS meter can be finely tuned. And what we need to look for is whether it's the useful idiots, whether it's the intelligentsia, whether it's the politicians or the global elite. If they talk about the need for mandates and omit the nuance of people who have had the cerveza sickness, therefore have natural immunity, you automatically know it's propaganda. And you automatically know that they are not intellectually honest. They are not objective. And you know that it is not about health. It's about something else. With the useful idiots, if they parrot that type of message, who knows? It's most likely because they're too lazy. They just don't have the time to do all the research. And I can totally relate to that. I mean, I totally get that. In fact, I was listening to Rogan last night, and he and his guest were talking about how it's becoming so difficult for the average person to really sift through the noise and find the truth. Because obviously the truth is nowhere even close to what is being told in the media. And in order to find the truth, you would have to take every single media article and basically fact check it on your own. Who has the time to do that? It's very few people. I mean, if you're people like me, sure, you have time to do that because you retired in 2012. You don't have any kids. You don't have a wife. You can allocate 8 hours a day plus to doing this. But what percentage of the population can do that? Almost zero. So what ends up happening, because people just can't allocate their entire lives to this, They just have to pick a side and just say, okay, I mean, I'm just going to go with it. So I'm going to pick this side, or I'm going to pick that. I'm going to pick this tribe, or I'm going to pick that tribe. And I'm just going to let them do all the thinking for me because I don't have time to do it. And I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that they're right. And I'm just going to try to rationalize the situation to make myself feel good so I can sleep at night, and just try to convince myself that they are always right and the other guys are always wrong. And that I'm just going to believe the institutions, I'm going to believe the intelligentsia, I'm going to believe the politicians over here, I'm going to believe the politicians over there, and that's how I'm going to live my life, and I'm just going to try to ignore the rest. Unfortunately, we see how that plays out throughout history in places like Russia, in places like Germany, places like East Berlin. Those are the people that get trapped, and those are the people that end up losing the most, unfortunately. And it sucks, and it sucks that that's the world we live in right now. And those are the choices you have. Either live your life trying to sift through and trying to find the truth, or live your life in a way that's normal and fun and enjoyable, and risk being blindsided by a, a government that's increasingly becoming a totalitarian police state. And those are our options right now. So we just keep using critical thinking, guys, and we keep standing up for the truth, try to be objective, try to listen to everyone's view, whether it's the useful idiots, whether it's the intelligentsia, whether it's the mainstream media. Preferably listen to people who have a different view, who are actually intellectually honest, intellectually curious. I would suggest someone like Sam Harris. I think he may have a little bit different view on this than I do, but at least, you know, he, although maybe biased, he's at least trying to explore some of the data. I would strongly suggest listening to people like my good friend, Dr. Chris Martenson, and also someone who I have a ton of respect for, Brett Weinstein. And Brett is, you know, someone that's way, way, way on the left, but he's someone that's done a lot of homework on this. He's an evolutionary biologist. Doesn't mean he's a virologist or an immunologist or anything, but he's someone that studies this, or has time to study it, and is at least objective, and is definitely on the political right. You know, I would listen to people like that and just try to do as much research as you can to come to your own conclusions, to really make a decision based on the risk reward that's right for you. And that's, you know, with your plan B, with the medicines, or with you know, how you want to try to maintain your freedom moving forward. We'll leave it at that. All right, guys, let's do some shout outs here. We got see something, say something. Oh, geez. No, I don't like that either. And that's what they're trying to push, where we get, I don't know, maybe it's, I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but that just reminds me of that. Those, you know, in California, they're trying to get everyone to spy on each other and tell the government exactly what your neighbors are doing. And again, it just goes back to the exact same tactics they used in communist Russia. It's yeah, they're all, we're dealing with a bunch of Bolsheviks. That's for sure. All right, got Nick Levis, Mike Nordman, Audrey Berry, R. Rosales, Rolf Steiner, Copper Backpack, Lori Maurer, Moody the Millennial, Quantitative Disease, Mike Nordman. I think I said Mike. Y Love, SN, Heroin Guy in the house, Steve Z, Kalne, Anthony's in the house. Mitch Goslin, All-Nighter Hider, Joe, G's, Craft, Cannabis Guides, Wayne Smith, Danny Bloom. All right, guys. Definitely check out the George Gammon channel tonight. We got a whiteboard video going up, everyone's favorite, where I discuss a prediction that I'm making. I don't usually make predictions, but I am making a prediction this evening. And the prediction is the U.S. will be in an economic depression in 2022. To understand my thoughts and why I'm saying that, why I'm making that prediction, you got to watch the video tonight. We'll see you over on the George Gammon channel.